Almost 1 million people once crammed into Central Park for one country music concert. It's still the biggest crowd in the history of American live music, and it went out live to more than 14 million homes. The man up on that stage was Garth Brooks, wearing a black cowboy hat. For about 10 years, country music wasn't just a genre you happened to like. It was the single most powerful force in American entertainment. And the numbers it put up are so big, they barely sound real when you say them out loud today. You forgot how big it actually got. So stay with this, because the decade you only half remember was quietly setting records that, almost 30 years later, still haven't been broken. These are the moments you forgot happened. They only get bigger as we go. And by the end, you'll understand exactly how nearly 1 million people ended up in that park. Start at the very beginning of the decade, in 1991. If you were alive for it, you watched a mother and daughter say goodbye on live television, and you probably forgot it was even on television at all. Naomi Judd had just been diagnosed with hepatitis C. At 44, she announced she was retiring, so the Judds, the most beloved duo in the genre, booked a farewell tour. More than 100 cities. It ended on December 4th in a college arena in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, with Reba McEntire and Carl Perkins standing in the wings. And that final concert went out on pay-per-view to 17 million cable households. 17 million. It became the most successful music pay-per-view event in cable history. You think of pay-per-view as a boxing thing, a heavyweight title thing. You forgot that a mother and daughter from Kentucky pulled the exact same trick and pulled it off while breaking your heart. That same year, 1991, was also the year SoundScan launched, and for the first time, the music industry had hard, verified sales data instead of guesses. That's why every number you're about to hear is real. That's why the records from this decade are measurable in a way the decades before it simply aren't. Then 1992 arrived, and you danced to it. Don't pretend you didn't. Achy Breaky Heart. Now here's the part you completely forgot. The song was almost never Billy Ray Cyrus's at all. It was written by a man named Don Von Tress, who, at the time he wrote it, was literally hanging wallpaper at a nursing home in Indiana. The song got offered to the Oak Ridge Boys first, and they turned it down because their lead singer just didn't like the words achy breaky. So it fell to an unknown named Billy Ray, and the music video did something no country song had ever done. It turned line dancing into a full-blown national obsession. For about a year, you couldn't walk into a wedding, a bar, or a high school gym without a room full of strangers stepping and turning in perfect unison to a tune a wallpaper hanger wrote on a cheap drum machine in his sister's basement. While that was happening on the pop side of things, George Strait and Alan Jackson were quietly stacking up number ones on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart. The kind of steady dominance that made country radio the most listened to format in America. The mainstream wasn't flirting with country music. Country music was the mainstream. By 1993, one man had gotten so powerful that he could pick a fight with the entire retail industry and fully expect to win. Garth Brooks was the biggest selling act of the decade, and he had decided he hated used CD stores because he believed reselling discs cheated the artists who made them. So he announced that he would not ship his brand new album to any store that dared to sell used CDs. Sit with that level of leverage for a second. Now here is the part you forgot, and it is the best part. It backfired in the most petty way imaginable. A record store owner up in Portland got so furious that he dragged all of his Garth Brooks CDs out to the parking lot, lit a grill, and barbecued them. He called it the Brooks BQ. And that one stunt, that single guy with a barbecue and a grudge, is now credited as one of the sparks that eventually grew into Record Store Day. And that's the thing you have to understand about this whole decade. None of it was happening out on the fringes. This was the mainstream. This was the center of the entire culture. The Country Music Association Awards were the most watched music awards show in America for stretches of this decade. Every one of these moments was just the next thing on the news, the next song on the radio, the next thing your family argued about over dinner. You weren't watching a niche. You were watching the main event, and you got so used to it that you stopped noticing how strange the sheer size of it really was. Hold on to that, because the last three are the ones that set the records still standing today. Now things start getting genuinely hard to believe, and they all land in one impossible year, 1997. You spent that year listening to a girl named LeAnn Rimes sing a song called Blue, a song she had actually recorded when she was 13 years old. That year, she walked into the Grammy Awards and won Best New Artist, beating every pop and rock act in the room. And in doing it, she became the youngest person to ever win a Grammy. Not the youngest country winner, the youngest, period. She was 14 years old and, to be exact, 14 years and 182 days. She won a second Grammy that very same night. And here's the part you forgot. Almost 30 years have gone by, and nobody younger has ever taken it from her. A year after that, in 1998, three women from Texas quietly broke a record that still stands today. The Dixie Chicks released their major label debut, Wide Open Spaces, fronted by a brand new lead singer almost nobody had heard of yet, named Natalie Maines. That album went on to sell more than 12 million copies, which made it the best-selling album by any duo or any group in the entire history of country music. To put that in concrete terms, Brooks and Dunn were the best-selling country duo of the era, and they didn't come close. But here's the number you forgot. In 1998 alone, those three women outsold every other country group combined, not outpaced them, outsold them. All of them, added together. But if you want the one number that should genuinely stop you cold, go back to the tail end of 1997, to an album you owned, your sister owned, and your aunt owned all at the same time. Shania Twain's Come On Over. You remember the singles. You forgot the scale. That one album, produced by her then-husband Mutt Lange and released on Mercury Nashville Records, has sold somewhere around 40 million copies worldwide. It is, to this very day, the best-selling studio album by any woman in any genre ever recorded. Country, pop, rock, all of it. A country record made in Nashville outsold every single album that any female artist in any style has ever released before it or since. Faith Hill was having one of the biggest runs in country music that same year. Tim McGraw was crossing over onto pop radio, and Shania Twain was outselling all of it combined. You were dancing to a world record at a wedding, and you had absolutely no idea. And then there's the one you really forgot. The single biggest thing country music did in the entire decade. August 7th, 1997. Garth Brooks announced a free concert in Central Park, in the dead center of New York City, a town that was supposed to roll its eyes at a man in a black cowboy hat. Here's what actually happened. The New York City Fire Department estimated the crowd at 980,000 people, nearly 1 million human beings, pressed shoulder to shoulder into a city park for a country concert. The broadcast on HBO pulled 14.6 million viewers, which made it the highest-rated music special of the entire year. Billy Joel and Don McLean walked out to join him. And he opened the whole night with a song called A Heart in New York, a quiet little nod to Paul Simon, the man whose old Central Park crowd record he had just obliterated. When you picture a field full of people completely losing their minds over music, you picture Woodstock. You forgot that the biggest one of the 90s wore a cowboy hat. So go back to that warm blur you call the 90s. The boots, the belt buckles, the line dance at the wedding you swore you were too cool for, None of it was small. You were living in real time through the single biggest run country music has ever had. A pay-per-view goodbye watched by millions. A ninth grader rewriting the record books. A woman outselling every female artist alive. And nearly 1 million people standing in one park for one man in a black hat. You didn't forget because none of it mattered. You forgot because back then, all of this was just an ordinary Tuesday.